Okay, we will be summarizing the whole story. I'm going to read the rest of the story, Ada's Violin, in just a moment. And what you're going to do for today's task in reading is you will summarize the entire story. Tomorrow and Friday, you'll be getting some practice with your own story. But for today, you're going to summarize the entire story of Ada's Violin. So hopefully you've been keeping track of it. If not, you can go back and listen to the first part and the second part, the beginning and middle, and now we're at the end. So the objective today is I can summarize the text of a story. So if you remember, Ada and her sister Noelia have joined a band of where the instruments are made out of things that were recycled from the garbage dump that they lived in. And so beginning with this, with her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on the high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. As Ada's skill grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she now took center stage playing solos. She helped teach the younger children too. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named a first violinist. Imagine, she was the first at something. Shortly after, she and her 39 fellow musicians were invited to perform concerts in Coutura, and later in the nearby capital city of Asuncion. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread. Soon they were asked to perform in other cities and even other countries. Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane, stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue waters of the Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapple, and saw sights they never imagined. The world dazzled them, just as they dazzled the world. When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a very special invitation. They were asked to tour with a world-famous rock band. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogota, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and people, and heard people screaming. But she didn't have to worry. As the recycled orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played, and as their performance came to a close, a crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded across the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill. Buried in the trash was music, and buried in themselves was something to be proud of. And that is the end of the story. There is an author's note. I'm not going to read it right now, but what I'd like to do is I would like to go forward and look at the retell that we're going to be doing. And so this first retell has the characters again, the setting, the problem, and then the events. You can think of it as being the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. So what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, and what happened in the end. And then think about the problem and the solution, and then the author's message. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the actual document that is in the assignment. Okay, so now I'm in the reading lesson for today, and you will have access to one or the other of the documents that you'll be filling out. So I'm going to show you the first one, and remember this is a Google assignment. So you have to click on the attachment, and this is the first one right here. It's just a beginning, middle, and end. I want you to just double click it, start typing what happened in the beginning. Double click, start typing what happened in the middle. Double click, start typing what happened at the end. And when you are done working with this, then you're going to go back to Schoology and you're going to submit it. There will be a submit button. All right, so we're not going to work in this one. We're going to actually work in the other one, which has beginning, middle, and end, problem, and solution. So I'm going to open up the document. And again, you might need to make it bigger, and that's pretty easy to do. You can just make it bigger like that. And then you can move it around. You can double click in it and then start typing. Okay, so the characters, the main characters, and then describe them. So beginning, we have Ada, we have Noelia, we have Chavez, who is the teacher, we have grandmother, we have mom and dad. Okay. The setting. So the setting of the whole story is most of it takes place in the dump at a dump in the city of Katura. But it also takes place, you can think about it, takes place at the end. They end up traveling around the country, so you can also, if you want to, put other things, other places that they went to, although it didn't really tell us. So thinking about the problem, what was the character's problem? Really, the main problem of the character was that Ada wanted to play music, but there weren't any instruments for them to play. And so now the events of the story. In the beginning, we know that Ada lived in a garbage dump with her parents, grandmother, and sister. Okay, in the middle of the story, and this is always going to be the biggest part, a teacher came to teach them to play music after making instruments from recycled garbage. And then in the end, they ended up, the band played all over the world and became famous. Now, thinking about how does the character solve the problem? Well, she learned to play music on a recycled instrument that was made for her. Now, this is the part that I want you to think about, is the author's message. So the author's message is, what do you think the author wants us to know or learn from this story? So it might be that maybe if you work hard at something, that you could do something really well. Maybe it's that something beautiful could come out of something ugly. The instruments sounded very beautiful, but they were made basically from garbage. So whatever you think the author's message is, that's what I want you to put in there. For those who are filling out the beginning, middle, and end, you can think about adding the message in there at the end. So you could say something like, the author wants to teach us, and then you can go on to say what they wanted to teach us.